The first duty of a modern government is to maintain order, control crime, punish criminals, and settle disputes. We are a relatively peaceful society, but we have serious problems in enforcing rule of law. In Tamil Nadu, in 2020, a father and son were brutally tortured for violating COVID lockdown restrictions, which resulted in their deaths. In Gurugram, in 2018, when a school kid was viciously murdered, the police arrested Ashok Kumar, the bus conductor, tortured him, and extracted a confession. Weeks later, CBI investigated the case and found the real culprit and declared Ashok Kumar as innocent. In Hathras, UP, a young lady was raped and murdered, and yet the administration did everything possible to suppress the incident and protect the perpetrators. In Hyderabad, a young veterinary doctor was gang raped and brutally murdered. The police were under tremendous pressure to provide instant justice, and the accused were killed in an extrajudicial execution. Dreaded gangster Vikas Dubey from UP faced a similar fate after being shot down soon after his arrest. In the case of the suspicious death of Sunanda Pushkar, it took over 2 years to get a DNA analysis done. Tellingly, the trial in the case of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's assassination took over 6 years. These few random examples illustrate the failure of rule of law across many levels: investigation, infrastructure, procedures, prosecution, and trial. Speedy and efficient justice, resolution of disputes, equality before law, and supremacy of law are vital for a civilized society for very practical reasons. In a village society, family bonds, caste networks, and social pressure moderated behavior and controlled crime. But with urbanization and migration, strangers now live in close proximity in densely packed cities. As social controls weaken, crime is bound to rise. If we have no capacity to forge links with the community, detect and punish simple crimes, and apply modern, scientific methods of crime investigation, and do all this in a credible, fair, non-partisan manner, crime will be uncontrolled. Society will be paralyzed by fear. Life will be unbearable. Similarly, disputes are bound to rise in a growing economy which will have multiple contracts, commercial transactions, and interactions. If there are no credible, speedy, inexpensive mechanisms to resolve disputes, mutual trust will collapse, people will be averse to risk, investments will fall, growth will suffer, poverty will continue, frustration will rise, society will be in peril. Unlike other major countries, criminal cases far outnumber civil cases in India. This skewed ratio in a society that is relatively peaceful and crime-free shows that most citizens avoid courts to settle civil disputes and instead resort to extra-legal methods or suffer injustice silently. Failure in addressing this situation would lead to grievous consequences. Anecdotal evidence from cities like Johannesburg, Mexico City, Lagos, Karachi, Lahore underscores that in the absence of robust rule of law framework, lawlessness will prevail, crime syndicates will mushroom, and life will be a living hell. Rule of law is not an esoteric constitutional concept. It's about people's daily struggles, about peace and harmony, about opportunities. It's a matter of life and death. There are aberrations in our rule of law instruments, but these can be set right. Various committees and commissions have suggested several practical, acceptable, and effective measures to strengthen our rule of law instruments, which will be discussed in this edition of the Indian Democracy at Work Conference on Rule of Law. Let us now take a look at some key areas of reforms. As social controls are weakening, the role of police in maintaining public order and controlling crime is more important than ever. The police, based as they are on primitive methods and obsolete procedures, are, however, often ineffective. While it's easy to blame the police, we must recognize the challenges of modern policing. The Indian police force, with a strength of 156 policemen per 100,000 population, is overburdened owing to multiple duties. Most other democratic countries have more policemen with great deal of specialization in functioning, backed by state-of-the-art technology. Police are not merely overstretched, they are also handicapped by woefully inadequate infrastructure, particularly the forensics. The annual DNA testing capacity in India is just over 20,000. Typically, in a major crime, 6 DNA samples are tested. Delhi alone witnesses around 11,000 violent crimes in a year. How can one expect the police to be effective when the support system is primitive? As a result, the police are under tremendous pressure to produce short-term results by hook or by crook to appease the public. Further, in an era of political polarization and contentious public discourse, the governance issues morph into law and order challenges. This puts the police in a difficult spot where they have to maintain order without resorting to excessive force or stifling legitimate protest in a democracy. The fusion of multiple functions in a single police force has weakened rule of law. While maintenance of public order and riot control require political supervision, crime investigation is about collecting admissible evidence to be able to get a conviction in a court and is therefore quasi-judicial in nature. It must be free of political interference. An independent crime investigation wing to investigate certain grave crimes is the need of the hour. They can be entrusted to probe crimes for which maximum punishment is more than 3 years of imprisonment, which amount to only 20% of total crimes in a year. To guide the investigation and secure a conviction, an independent prosecution wing must be created, headed by a district attorney drawn from the judiciary, a sessions judge working on deputation for a period of 5 years. Such a system will bring in the benefits of independence, better coordination between the police, prosecution, and the courts, while also enhancing the stature of prosecution. At the state level, an independent investigation and prosecution board will supervise all investigation and prosecution. If we consider case load for serious crimes in the country, the number of crime investigators and prosecutors is far less than the optimal strength required. In the US, the number of investigating officers per 100,000 population is 32.18, while it is 1.74 in India. The number of prosecutors per 100,000 population is 17.63 in the US and 0.67 in India. No wonder the conviction rate in India is abnormally low, with only 50.4% IPC cases resulting in conviction, most of which, presumably, are based on confessions. Providing adequate manpower and forensic facilities at the district level is a critical minimum requirement. Over 34 million cases are pending in our trial courts, with most cases taking far too long to be resolved. It takes about 1,445 days on an average to enforce a contract. That is too long a period to inspire the confidence of even the most courageous investor. Outdated procedures are a significant cause of this delay. Recommendations made by various reports of the Law Commission and other expert bodies must be implemented to address this challenge. The consequences are perhaps more apparent and immediate on the criminal side. Indian prisoners witness an alarmingly high proportion of under-trials at 70%, which further results in overcrowded prisons. It is high time that the recommendations made by the Malimath Committee are adopted. Moreover, we only have 14 judges per million population, whereas the global norm is 50 or more. As a matter of fact, a trial court judge in India disposes of 824 cases in a year compared to 159 in the UK. In such a situation, it is neither realistic nor fair to expect the courts to function optimally. To make justice more accessible, the Gram Nyayalayas Act was enacted in 2008 to establish local courts in rural areas. At the proposed rate of 1 court per block panchayat, there should have been 6,000 such courts by now. However, only 395 have been sanctioned and mere 221 are functioning. These courts need to be set up on priority across the country, including urban areas, where the need for such courts is even greater. High courts are inundated with litigation. There are 5.6 million cases awaiting a final decision before 673 High Court judges in the country. In 2019, the disposal rate per High Court judge was an astonishing 3,500 cases. This is a reflection of the many challenges that our high courts are facing: high vacancies, overcrowded dockets, and inadequate infrastructure. Although entrusted with the authority to adjudicate on matters of constitutional importance, these courts are currently unduly burdened with appellate and revisional matters, which account for 40% of their caseload. All four areas, police, prosecution, procedural law, and courts, are crying for urgent reform. We only spend about 0.8% of the GDP on rule of law, whereas most other democratic societies spend about 1.8%. Expenditure on rule of law must be taken as investment in society. Neither peace, nor harmony, nor stability, nor economic growth are possible without rule of law. This conference is a humble attempt to bring all stakeholders together to look for pragmatic reforms consistent with speedy justice and citizens' liberties.